Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Hampus Jakobsson. He's an entrepreneur and angel investor. Hampus, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You and I connected a while ago, kind of online, and I love talking to people that have been through it and have tons of experience in this industry, and the fact that you're in Sweden and I'm in North America is I love talking to people kind of in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm curious then, maybe let's start off with kind of where you grew up.
So I grew up in Sweden,
Okay.
and I think that what I think is more telling about my background is like I grew up in an academical family. Both of my parents are university professors in maths and science, and I have three older brothers that are like 8, 9, and 11 years older than I am.
Okay.
So in a sense, I kind of grew up with like 5 parents, in a weird way. And I think that shaped me massively who I am in so many ways. I think that I think I grew up in an environment where like I could do anything I wanted because my brothers are always paved the way. But at the same time, I grew up with knowing that I was quote unquote not good at anything, but loved anyway. Which I think is an amazing background to become an entrepreneur. Because if you have 3 older siblings, they're much better at absolutely everything than you are.
Sure, because you're the youngest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like with 3 and that age difference, but at the same time, I think the amazing thing is like I always felt like even though I looked at whatever result I did, I always felt like it was okay.
Sure.
I mean, I was okay, which I think is a very interesting way to grow up.
Totally. So you went to post-secondary, like university. What did you end up kind of taking in university, and what was the reason you decided to do that in university?
So I did computer science and finished my master's in control theory and AI. And the reason was really this, that I was from, again, that background is like I was really, really fascinated about behavior. Okay. Like if I grew up as always trying to figure out what was in the heads of my 5 parents, like how do I get to sit at the table when they were playing games? How do I get to, just stay up an hour longer, whatever. And so I think a lot of times I had to just understand people. And one of the things that frustrated me when I was in high school, that like all literature about people, like sociology and psychology, were very kind of old-fashioned and kind of like observational. And I really wanted a way where I could like tinker and play and figure out like how people worked. And then I just felt like computer science and statistics feels like a good thing because you can like, there was a time when people started like computer simulations of like 3D renderings and stuff. So it felt like maybe we can like simulate people and have that as a way of thinking about how people work. And I just figured out that I really, really loved it. So it was just a really weird reason that I wanted to understand people. So therefore I did computer science. But that's the truth.
Sure. No, I always find it fascinating, like how people choose to go into the fields that they go into, especially kind of the computer science, because everybody kind of gives a somewhat of a different answer, and I always kind of find it fascinating. So you graduate university. What did you end up doing post-university?
I actually started, two things there. During university, I had this thought that I really wanted to work abroad. Okay. And I was, I think that I always want to do things like, and that's the thing also, like I'm getting back to the 3rd time. I'll try to avoid getting back to the 4th now, but like growing up like the youngest kid, it's like, I always felt like, when I said like, I want to do this, like I want to ride a motorbike, my parents were like, you can't do it. Like you're too young. Like, you can, I knew I could do it too early, but I was not yet. I'm like, I want to ski in this way. You can't because like you're too young, but I had 3 brothers to do it. Right, so I think like when I started university, I really felt I was kind of trigger happy to do stuff. So I was like, I want to work abroad. And I was just thinking like, how can I do that? So I just emailed other other like companies I really liked in other countries and said, Sweden has this mandatory internship system that we have to do an internship, which is totally a lie.
Okay, I was going to ask you that.
No, I have to do an internship, and your company looks like exactly what my exam is going to be about. So can I do this? And a lot of companies were like, okay, this kid is emailing. Let's be nice to him. And I went through the interview, and I like often like did really well in interviews. And like, yeah, let's get you here and work. So I spent all summers working at really, really interesting companies.
That's
and
amazing.
it was really fun, but also I worked at completely overqualified stuff. Like I was really, really, really underqualified. But what, again, I think with my background was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna figure it out. So I figured it out every summer and like learned so much that I was like, it was amazing. And then the last summer, I worked at a company. It was an arts company in London. So this is before I graduated. And it was a computer arts company, and this was back in like 1899. The companies had infinite amount of money, so a lot of companies were like, "We want this cool interactive lobby, la la la." And this arts company was like, "Yeah, we'll build it," but they didn't really have a lot of programmers, or actually like any. So I was there during the summer and build stuff, and it was like the best time of my life because, well, back then, because it was like somebody said, like to a kid, "You can build whatever you want, you can buy whatever computer equipment you want,"
That's
and you
awesome.
that was incredible. So I felt I want to do that. I want to continue doing that. So when I got home, I kind of pitched a couple of my best friends, said, can we do that in a way? And this is like university. And then just completely randomly, one of them was on a big party, and one friend, remote friend acquaintance, they ended up talking. And he said, like, so my mom is a journalist doing a big science festival in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, which is pretty far away from where I am. And she's looking for people who can build an arts installation, like your super cool stuff. You do kind of those things, right? And this friend just picked up the phone and called me and like, Hampus. And I was like, yeah, that's what we do. No problem. We'll build that.
I love that.
It was completely crazy. And then, they turned around and it's like, so yeah, I mean, we have a budget of like $60K, and like $60K for an arts installation is massive.
Sure.
In arts, it's just infinite amount of money. So we were like, wow. But then we realized if we're going to, given that as salary or something like that, we just have to tax all the money, or like a lot of the money. But if we have a company, we can buy computer stuff. Again, we're gonna remember that we're 20 years old,
Sure.
And save on the VAT, because like you can deduct the VAT. So we realized, oh, let's start a company. But the problem is starting a company back in 2000 was that it actually needed the capital to start it, and we didn't have that capital. So we just called a couple of more friends that we'd worked with for a long time and was like, do you want to start a company with us? It's like, you can do other stuff. It doesn't matter. We just like, we have one company, we invoice different things, and then we'll, take the money and pool them out in different directions. And they were like, yeah. And we'd worked a lot together, trust each other. So 6 friends started a company, and there were 3 different projects.
That's amazing.
And the first year we did those 3 different corporates separately. And then we graduated pretty much one by one during that year. And then at the end of that year, suddenly, a friend called us, and then it just turned into big business, which is another story.
Okay, so I'm curious to hear this story, I guess.
Yeah, so the weird story that was like we had worked during our university studies. We had worked at one of the first mobile gaming companies.
Okay.
And seeing that mobile gaming was really disaster. And I mean, this is like, this is back in like, 98, 99. So mobile games, black and white screens, horrible experience.
Yep.
And we had seen how mobile phone manufacturers just tried to do smaller and smaller and smaller screens and smaller phones.
Yep.
So we just felt it's completely dead. And then one of our friends that went to university with us, or even earlier, like to high school with us, he started working at Sony, and Sony was building phones, and they just merged with Ericsson, who was
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, back in 01, 02. So he called us up and said, like, so we're building a phone, and it has a color screen, and we've never done a color screen before because Sony wants kind of PlayStation experience, and
Sure.
the Ericsson guys are building it, and the Ericsson guys pretty much like the hardware, the technology is kind of like a microwave oven quality, because that's what phones were, but the experience needs to be PlayStation quality, which is like kind of a gap. So he said, you have done kind of those magical stuff. Can you help us? And like our knee-jerk response was like, hey, this is never going to work. Mobile phones are just dead. It's completely irrelevant. Who cares about that? And he's like, can you make it? Can you do it? And we're like, of course we can do it. But it's like, who want to work in mobile? It's a dead industry. And he's like, come on, guys. I mean, you're going to save me. And we're like, sure, we'll work with you. And, we'd only worked with like arts projects and a couple of other things. So first time we came into this company, or they came to us, Like we met, proper software engineer organization, really, really smart. And we were like surprised. These guys seem to be fun to work for. So they came in and said, like, you're going to do this as a consultancy project. And one of the things we'd seen, like, especially when I worked at arts companies, they were saying we should have started a product company. Like we should have had a product we could license because we could have owned more things and build better stuff. So we just turned around and said, like, no, this is actually a software licensing thing. And they were like, oh, cool. What's the license? Like, what's the license fee? And we were like, oh my God, that's like, we don't even know where to start. So we were like, the biggest number we'd ever heard, again, as the kids we were, $60K. Like that's, the arts installation. So we just like, $60K. and the Sony Ericsson manager turned around and was like, per phone? And we were like, yeah, exactly. Trying to get the voice down. I was like, yeah, absolutely, per phone. That's exactly the model. And then he said, like, and then you have NRE on top. And we like, NRE? Like, no. And he just said standard rates. And we were like, yeah, standard rates. That's like, we just wrote standard rates. And he was like, totally cool. I'm going to draft you like an agreement and get back to you. Thanks a lot. This is amazing. And he walked out. And we just went to Wikipedia and like NRE, non-refundable engineering. Oh, we get paid per hour too. So that's how it started. And then we started working with them and had a really great time, hired a lot of our best friends that we knew that were smart from university and other places, grew the team completely organic. Like we had no funding, like, we were university students.
Sure.
And then after like 2 years or 2 years, we was like, especially me, again, wanting to live in the future, I was really, really tired of the Swedish consensus mentality of some of these meetings. So I was like, I really want to work with somebody who's like more aggressive on like bold and want to do cooler stuff. So through a contact, we got in contact with Samsung, and Samsung is like, I think Samsung is, I know it's not the Korean word for aggressive, but it could have been. I mean, they're just like the definition of bold and aggressive.
Sure.
Started working with them in Korea, and it was just amazing. We started building a Korean office, sent plenty of our friends to Korea and build an office there. And then after a year or two, through another thing, started working with Motorola, and Motorola became a customer. Half a year later, Nokia became a customer. And like, this is not intended. Like we had no clue. And this time we were kind of 45 people and we were like 24. And it was like me and another co-founder were kind of pretty much like co-CEOing stuff and like dying of just being a manager. We hated it in so many ways because we were like, we wanted to like do stuff and learn and not like manage people and just sit in meetings all day and write emails and just worry about other people. And then like we're supposed to give him some prize for some kind of company development. And there was a woman came in who was going to interview about stuff. And she had so many questions. Like, I mean, we were like, whoa, this prize must be the worst prize, like the hardest prize to get, because like her questions were so detailed, like really, really detailed about legal stuff. And we're like, oh my God, she's so serious, meticulous, answered everything. And we were like, it's not a big prize, but I mean, whatever. It's like, we were just like, why not answer it? It's like, she's not a spy. And after all of those questions, she was like, I'm in the jury for this thing. And we were like, yeah, why are we others sitting here? And she said, because I'd really, really want to work with you guys. Like my dream would be to work here. And like everything you're saying is so exciting. I'd love to kind of, work here as operations. And this is like a woman who had been a CEO of another really big tech company here. Wow. And we were like, are you kidding us? And like, didn't your last company sell to Zycorp or Nuance or something? And she was like, yeah, but this is super exciting. And we were like, do you want to become our CEO? And she was like, can I become the CEO? She said. And we were like, yeah, we'd love to not be managers. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to be the CEO. And then like she signed a month later and we were like, oh, finally, we're not the CEO. This is awesome. And then a couple of like 2 years in, Google called from nowhere to me and was like, we want you to design, we're designing a phone. We want you to be here and design, do the user interface design, like the graphics for Android.
Sure.
And I was like, no, I mean, we do software licensing. We have designers, but I mean, we spend them to make sure that projects are super successful because we're royalty based. We get paid per phone shipped. So we want the software to be great, but of course we want the experience to be great because that's how the volume gets up and that's how we get money. And Andy Rubin, who was the person running the Android project and a super powerful person, he was like, you don't hear me. I'm Google. I want you to come. Like, I mean, I've never heard this people saying no before. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. I can recommend you 5 other companies. I gave him amazing recommendations. He pretty much hung up. And I was like, okay, whatever. He called me the day after and was like, hey, my name is Andy Rubin. I was like, yeah, I remember you. He's like, yeah, then you remember what I want. Yeah, you wanted me to design Android. And I was like, yeah, you know my answer. And he was like, just hung up. Third day called me. I'm in the room and I was like, okay, hey, let's talk about this. Like what, like how, like you can't just call me every day. And it's like, no, I agree. So how do you want to do it, Hampus? Do you want to be a mount to me on Monday? And I was like, the thing is, like, we have to like pull people who have an important project. He was like, we're Google. We print money for a business. How much money do you want to get paid if we're going to come? And I was like, okay, Andy, I've got a proposal. We're going to be there for 2 weeks with 3 people. We do it as a design sketch. We decide, like, we work with you. After 2 weeks, we decide if we want to continue or quit. You pay everything: allowances, flights, rental cars, everything, and like a really hefty amount per hour. He was like, what's the hefty amount? I was like, $600 per hour. Deal. I was like, deal? I was like, deal. Okay, see you on Monday then. Flew to Mountain View. This is back in 2007. Ended up staying there for many months. Like one of the most fun projects I've ever worked with, and ran that. It was really, really amazing. Did all the graphic design for Android. Worked inside Google. Was like, amazed and shocked by Google, and as so many other ways, people that have worked there, of course. And then got back. And when I got back, I really felt that I'd seen the future of mobile phones. Realized that Google is going to change the way phones are going to be built, not necessarily. They're going to change them from beneath, and Apple is trying to change them from above. Like Apple decides how it's going to look, and Google makes other people, so that makes it possible for other people to build iPhones back then. So looking at that, I realized everything is just going to go, all of our old business is going to go, haywire, because all of our old business is dependent on the old industry. So really came in and realized I became like the Cassandra. I walked around the office saying, oh, we're going to die. And people were like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, no, but realize this can happen. So then I sat down with the CEO, and she was like, so what do you want to do about it? And it's like, I just want to move to another building with a couple of people and just try to build the thing that will kill us. Like, I want to try to kill us.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, you go ahead. And it's like, as long as you don't kill us, just tell me, give me a heads up. Sure. I moved to another building, handpicked a couple of people, got a couple of actually like students too, and started building a new way we're going to build products and market ourselves. And one of the really interesting innovations that came out of it were that we created a YouTube channel where we kind of sketched how the future is going to look, and we kind of faked it by doing a lot of different tricks, like visual tricks. And then what we did is we did all these visual tricks, but then we filmed them as if we had built them. So the point was that when you look at the video, you get this suspension of disbelief. You really think that we build it. And that means that during those minutes, you're sitting here and like, oh my God, they can build this. And even if you like intellectually in the end understand, oh, I guess it's fake, during the movie, you actually lived in the future for 2 minutes, which means that afterwards you have completely changed your mind. And that became like it was really awesome. And it also became, crazy enough, one of our absolutely best of ways of getting new customers. People had seen it. They wanted something similar. They came in from all directions. And we just grew and grew and grew. And then suddenly one day, another company called, BlackBerry, and said, hey, I run M&A for BlackBerry. I'd love you to be BlackBerry. We can acquire you. And I was like, I don't think you want to acquire us. We're 180 people. We got 40 people in Korea. We got like 10 people in San Francisco, 5 in Chicago, 10 doing automotive. We're in Malmö, Sweden. The rest of us. And he was like, I want to acquire you. Listen to me. Can you be in Waterloo on Monday? And first of all, I was like, Waterloo? And he heard my hesitation, I guess. And he was like, Waterloo, Canada. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, for me, Waterloo is in Belgium.
Sure. Okay. Fair. Okay.
So I was like, okay, sorry. Yeah, sure. Like, what are we going to do there? You're going to meet our CEO, Michael Azuridis. Okay, cool. So we flew there, me and a co-founder, and we really felt like we didn't want to tell the company that we were going to fly to somebody who wanted to acquire us. But first of all, we think it's never going to happen.
Sure.
And secondly, if even the remote chance, then everyone is going to be in distress till we've figured out. So we just called in sick on Sunday and just flew there and met them. And we started out by Don Lindsay, who was the guy who designed OS X for Steve Jobs for Apple. Met us at the airport. I was like, hey, I'm Don Lindsay. And we're like, Don Lindsay, I've heard that name before. Talked to him in the car, and we're like, really had a good time. Like, super nice guy. Then met next guy, the person who ran software for BlackBerry, like super amazing person. And then the third person, super amazing. We're like, all these people are like some of this. And, I had been worked with like Google and met all the people at Apple and Samsung and all these guys. And I would say like BlackBerry and Google and Samsung and BlackBerry, Google, Apple and Samsung were four of the most impressive companies I've ever met. I was just so impressed by BlackBerry from the inside. And we came into this big conference room, and Michael Azuridis, he's a really big guy. He's like, hey, really nice to meet you. And he says, so I want to build, my team is saying they want to acquire you. but I want to use Adobe to build our next user interface platform and everything. And then, like, I immediately understood this is never going to happen. Like, because Adobe was one of those unrealistic things that people tried, but, Adobe sold them on PR. So I was like, this is never going to work. So I just, like, me and my co-founders, like, okay, whatever. So we just realized, okay, let's teach these guys something at least, so that when we leave, we at least leave with, like, they're, like, we taught them something. So it's not worthless if we flew to Canada. So we're standing there going into massive assault, just like, hammering his suggestions and, like, fighting with, like, and Michael is not only is he big and intimidating, he's one of the most smartest people I've ever met.
Sure.
It was, like, amazing, going into details, turning things around, and arguing with us for 25 minutes. And, like, the whole management team is there. And at the end of it, this is what me and my co-founder had done for so many other people. For us, it was just every day. Like, you fight with managers about stupid tech choices.
Sure, yep.
So we just fought and fought. And after 25 minutes, he just stops. And he says, can you be in my office? It's just next door. And we're like, yeah, we're here till, 5. Then our flight leave. We need to look for the airplanes. Like, sure. He was like, yeah. We walked into his huge office. He looked at, like, Waterloo University, the nanotech department. He was like, I funded that, actually. It took a lot of money, but I really believe in nanotech. And he talked about Waterloo University. We're standing like, whoa, it's super cool. And he turns around to us and says, I'm so happy you did that show from a management team. They constantly talk about Adobe. I think it's the most stupid thing I ever heard. Of course, it needs to be done the way you do it. I really just wanted to hear all the arguments. Can you please wear BlackBerry badges in 6 weeks? And we just said, like, what? It's like, so, yeah, sure. Like, like, how do you what do you want to, like, pay and whatever? He was like, what's your turnover? And we're like, our turnover is like, it's like 35. So he said, like, what's your next year turnover? And we're like, it's like $35 million. And I was, like, optimistic, of course. Sure. And he was like, okay, let's pay 4 times that, like $150 million. Is that fair? He was like, I don't know. Like, I mean, you put it in writing. And it's like, but it sounds fair for you. Like, if I send a paper $150 million, you're not going to be pissed off. And we're like, no. I mean, and he said, I know you own the company. So it's like, it's not that I understand it's a lot of money, but I don't want to, like, underpay you. Sure, no problem. And we flew home. And when it landed, we had, like, a paper from them saying we'd like to acquire TAT for $150 million. And 6 weeks later, we were TAT. We were BlackBerry.
That's amazing. So you stayed in Sweden then, or did you have to move to Canada?
No, actually, originally wanted me to move to Canada. I really didn't. I had, I had one kid, and I was about to get, actually 2 more. I didn't know that back then, but I was about to get twins. So I was very, very reluctant. I was like, I really don't want to leave for Canada. But I ended up, like, being in Canada quite a lot, but staying in Malmö. And the thing is, like, I ran M&A for EMEA for them, for Europe for them. So it actually kind of made a very lot of sense for me to be here. And in the beginning, I ran, like, but supported the integration of the company into BlackBerry. So it made also a lot of sense for me to be here. And then the nice thing about running M&A for them was that I got to spend 2 years, because I stayed 2 years, to be on the other side. I got to be, like, I felt like I had been running around in the jungle trying to do innovation and trying to figure out how the world worked, and, like, climb pretty tall ladders. I'd been at a lot of management meetings and, like, helped a lot of these big manufacturers. But if you're at M&A, you're standing in this completely unrealistic ivory tower, looking down at the landscape as if it's like pawns. And, like, I had calls when, like, the CEO called me, and Mike called me on a Sunday and was like, do you have time to talk? It's like, yes, of course, it's you. Like, what do you want to say? He was like, I thought about this. I'd really love to own Adobe. I was like, do you want to buy Adobe? It's like, no, maybe not Adobe. Premiere. Can you just buy Premiere of them? It's like, do you want to contact Adobe and see if we can buy Premiere? Yeah. Can you do that? We'll talk Wednesday, Hampus. And he hung up the phone. I was like, okay, interesting. Like, you see the world from above. You see that everything's an opportunity.
Sure.
And especially, like, in my background, was, like, I've been, like, a tech crafts person in a sense, and, like, had been down in the dirt and build huts and then higher and higher houses. For me, it was an amazing experience just seeing everything from above and how it actually looked. So that was an amazing experience. And then 2 years after that, like, after we started, then Michael Lazaridis got pushed out. Like, the board wanted more of BlackBerry, yada, 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 as I think the rest of the world knows now. And he was pushed out, or some kind of, like,
something like that,
innovation position. And then the COO took the helm, who was Torsten Heinz, who was like an amazing operational guy, but he was, like, operations. So, like, let's cut down on the crazy stuff. And of course, a lot of the M&A were kind of, extracurricular, honestly. So like I really felt this is not gonna be the place. So I pretty much like 4 or 5 weeks in, I just called him and said like I don't think you don't need me. And he was like, stay on till TAT is completely locked, like has delivered all the deliveries. And then after that, you don't have to be at the office. You can just leave, but just don't announce anything. But I was really happy about that. That was really perfect for me.
Okay, so you left. What did you end up doing after that?
So I started angel investing when I was doing M&A, or actually a bit earlier. And I really, really enjoyed helping people and building products and understanding, because I'm so fascinated about behavior. I'm fascinated like both how innovation happens, teamwork happens, individual development, but also like the meeting between the user / customer and product. And like having done a UI company for 8 years, I was really fascinated about that. So I wanted to like meet more places where products were being created and work with people to like find the perfect fit. So I started angel investing and did that during BlackBerry times. And when I quit BlackBerry, I really felt that I became like one of those quote unquote armchair investors that almost like had good tips, but it was just 2 years since I'd been in the field. Sure. And honestly, like I would say like 5 years since I'd been in the field, because at the end of TAT era, I mean, TAT was a 180 people company. And at that era, you're not in panic about raising money. And like, we never raised money even. So like, I just felt that I was becoming one of those opinionated people who actually didn't know stuff maybe. So I really felt I just have to start another company. And I wrote a list of the things I wanted to learn. And like 3 things. I really wanted to understand like the modern sales and marketing.
Okay.
Because I really felt like TAT, our deals were like $5 million per customer per year. I was like, and then we usually were paid like 3 or 4 million extra for starting the project. So like these are like, $5 to $10 million things you sign agreements for, and then they last for like they give you another 5 million every year and so on and so forth. So like I knew the name of the dog and the spouse and everything of our customers.
That's awesome.
It was really great, especially if like you're interested in behavior. It was amazing, and understanding culture, like understanding Japanese culture and understanding Korean culture and Taiwanese and American, everything was amazing. But I really felt that it's like I saw like Dropbox and Box and like Evernote and like all of those companies who does this sale, which is like they sell like super small deals. How can they be built? I was super fat. How can you market to these companies? Can you take the way that marketplaces like eBay and Etsy and those guys, how they run marketing with like Google Ads and stuff, and make that in an enterprise world where the deal size is huge? Can you do something like that? And the second thing I was fascinated about, like distributed teams, just feels like it's possible now, and having like another kind of hierarchy and everything.
Sure.
And then the third thing was like venture capital, because since I'd never raised venture capital and a lot of my startups like invested in, they were raising venture capital and helped them. So I wrote that list and started just thinking what I could do. Ended up like me and my old tech co-founder at TAT met a guy who was one of the first in at ClickView, who was like the big TechBlow competitor. So like a data visualization thing. Sat during the whole summer and sketched different things, like met at a cafe like once every week, and really felt that there was a need for a company here. Founded that company together, which ended up being a sales and marketing data visualization thing. What happened after 3 months is that the ClickView guy left because like it didn't fit him all to be a startup. And then 3 months after that, my old tech co-founder left. Recruited new founders, raced around, build that company, and like learned everything there is about like how products are being, how people like how internet and sales works nowadays. Like we had LinkedIn and Evernote and Hootsuite and Intercom as customers, and plenty others like small, and like really learned how they attract people like customers in and get them to convert and everything. Learned all the tools, but then we couldn't really get like what's in startup land called unit economics. Like we couldn't really get it to work, the money side of things, unless we had a professional service component, unless we were willing to kind of help people with setting up their CRMs and clean data. And I was so sick and tired from TAT, because when you sell to, whatever, Google, Motorola, Samsung, like you can't sell them a box. Like there will be people around them. And I was really tired of that whole thing of having lots of people on every project. And then the VCs were not super keen on it either because it doesn't scale as quick.
Right.
So I really felt that this is really never going to happen the way we want it to be. And I felt we should probably sell off this technology, which is amazing, to somebody and just do something else. And we actually got an acquisition offer, and then the acquisition they turned bad, or not turned bad, but like they changed their mind. And nothing strange. Like having run M&A for 2 years, it's standard that people change their mind when mid process.
Sure.
But that again became a turning point for us. So it became a turning point for us, like, okay, let's not go for a super high fly sell to one of the most famous tech companies in the world. Just close this thing, get the employees to do other important stuff in their own lives. Let's debrief seriously so people learn as much as possible. And then let's just sell like the box for a lot less money, but actually just get it out the door and like, do something about it. So that's what we did this summer. And now I'm free as a bird.
Okay. So before we kind of get into, that, I'm curious then, you have, like, obviously you've been extremely successful. You've worked at some of the biggest companies on the planet. I'm kind of curious to know, like, you've had these kind of huge highs, and I wouldn't say closing down a company, it was necessarily like a low, but what did you is there anything that you've learned that you could tell the listener, that kind of you've seen time and time again that you could kind of give advice on, whether it's from, working for these huge companies or kind of, deciding to wind down a product?
I think that, I could sadly, as my wife would say, I could sadly talk for hours about that. No, but I think that, for me, one of the things I learned the most is that, or there are plenty of things, but one thing is people first. It's okay. Like everybody are people. It's like whether you do sales, marketing, hiring, whatever, it's people. It doesn't matter if you're selling to Motorola, Samsung, or like the boy next door, or you're hiring, super senior, super stellar woman who wants to join you as a CEO, or if you're like hiring a person at university. They're people. They're really, really people. It's people buying, people selling, people's egos, people's dreams. And if you treat people badly, the company will not succeed. So I think that I have this extreme strong urge to make sure that like everybody I meet should be happy that they wasted that half an hour or 15 minutes or 5 years, whatever, working with me or meeting me. Because I really don't want to waste people's time. I hate waste. So when Michael Azarides says, we were going to use Adobe, we were going to be in Waterloo outside Toronto for another 5 hours. Why not just lecture these guys about what they don't know? It's like, we could have said, okay, let's skip it and gone downtown Toronto. But we were like, no, that's not going to be a value add. Come on, let's just tell them how it works. And like time and time again, like when we put in an ad at the recent company I just did saying we want to hire a person for this role, and we're just too many guys, so we really want a woman to work in this role, because the world is just like the tech world is just too many men.
Sure. And
got so many people pissed off, and people wrote us we're like, this is not okay, this is like illegal, it's like discriminating and la la la. And then this girl applies, and I was like, oh yeah, great, like good profile, everything was interesting. And I replied to her like, could you please do this as a first test? And then she replies like, oh my God, no, that sounds just way too hard. And I just felt, and when I read it, I was like, oh no, that's so irritating. But then something just clicked in me. And I think that I'm just brutally honest with people. So I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. I just clicked reply, and I was like, no, you don't. You don't get it. This is why women have lower salaries. This is why. And it's like long rant, evil email where I was like, you don't say you think this is hard. You know what? Believe in yourself. For God's sake, write an amazing test now and show me that you're way better than everyone else. And I just clicked send. And I was like, she can definitely sue me for that if she wants to. But I'll just if this is her only interaction with me, at least, this is probably the best thing somebody said to her for 10 years, because she needs to hear this.
Okay.
And it takes a day, and she replies with the test.
Really?
Yeah. And I read it, and I'm like, this is really good. You know that. This is really good. And she was like, is it amazing? And I was like, no, I red marked everything which was not amazing, but I'd love you to come here and work. And she looked at all the things I redlined, and she was like, you're pretty hard with people. You know that? Everything you really redlined, most of what I wrote. And I was like, yeah, let me sit down and explain it. I explained it to her, and then like at the meeting, I explained it to her. She said, "I really want to work for you." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's the right attitude because I'm not going to be nice. I'm going to work to make sure that you learn as much as possible. So on the other side, you're going to be the person that everybody wants to hire. Those people are the ones I want to hire." And she was like, "I'm in." I was
That's
like, "Good."
amazing.
So I think
Okay.
that's like one of my main rules. Like people you touch, they should be happy they met you.
Yeah, no, that I think that's actually really good advice. I'm curious, is there anything else over the years that you've learned like that?
Yeah, another thing I think is I think that so one of the most important things also is like just knowing who you are in a sense. Like I think knowing your what strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
I think that one of the hardest people to work with are the people who, quote unquote, whose egos writing checks their body can't cash,
Fair.
and who don't really know. Like if you have people who believe they're great developers or salespeople, designers, or marketeers, whatever, and when you tell them they're not really, they get really angry because they don't want to hear that.
Yep.
And I think it's so important to kind of be vulnerable and like ask for people to tell you like tell me my worst sides, tell me my best sides, like tell mostly actually my worst side. Like I don't need to hear that I'm a nice or whatever, just tell me what I'm bad at so that I know that, because like those are blind spots for me.
Sure.
And of course then if you have really bad self-confidence, then maybe just telling people like I have really bad self-confidence. When you tell me I'm bad at something, I take it very personally. So people are like, "Oh, I didn't know that. You don't seem like a person who's got bad self-confidence." Like, "No, but I do," or whatever, whoever you are. Just telling people and being vulnerable, just saying, I'm afraid of the dark. Like, can I call you when I'm biking home or whatever? Like people is, whoa, you're a real person. Um, and I think that honesty about yourself and also about other people is in the end what's going to create like value, like life. And I think that for me, I know, I know that I guess the real word is like that I'm a workaholic. Like I really, really enjoy helping people and doing stuff, which means that I just tend to just work way too much. And I don't define it as work. I just define it as like doing stuff. But the problem is when you get a couple 100 emails and whatever, it looks as work for other people. But like for me, it's not. But like if you end up sitting at like 1 a.m. in the morning and doing it kind of becomes work. Next morning you feel that it was work.
Yeah,
So for
I know what you
me,
mean.
yeah, and I think for me, I think that the learning I have done is that I really have to create constraints for myself to make sure that I become like a well balanced person.
Sure.
And I think for me, it's like I cook all the meals for my kids and for my wife. And like I'm at home at 4:30 every day. I cook dinner, and I cook like extremely serious dinners. I cook
Really?
like 1 hour. I spend 1 hour cooking
Wow.
dinner and making something really, really serious, and like make sure that like sitting at the table and really like having conversation, enjoying it, putting them to bed, reading them a bedtime story, playing a game, whatever. And when they've fallen asleep, I pick up my computer again. And if my wife says, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, give me 15 minutes. And then I like really avoiding it. And then when she falls asleep, yeah, I get my computer and I work till I realize I have to fall asleep. Um, and that is like, I have a lot of those tricks
Sure.
to try to like just help myself to like, to be a person and not be a machine. Um, because a lot of times I love the machine parts. Like I love telling people, if you email me, I will respond within 24 hours. And I do.
Yeah, that's
And I
amazing.
and I think it's just about doing it. And like, if people write me long emails, I reply, too long, didn't read, write shorter email, and I will reply to you. Uh,
Really? That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, because I think that if you write, a lot of people write an email, which is like their life story, and there's
Yeah.
no question. They just write this long, long email trying to explain where they're from and where they're thinking. And you skim through it when you're in the bathroom, and you're like, what do they want? And you reply like, to another thing, what do you want? And they say, I want to meet you. And I reply, about what? And they say, because I want to raise money. How much? And they're like, $50 million. For what? To build a perpetual battery system. I reply, I don't think that's a good idea. But I do know somebody who's really interested in battery people. If you want, I can introduce you to him because he runs a battery company and wants to hire people. And they're like, that would be awesome. And I do the intro. And then, I help them and I'm off the hook.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's actually quite fascinating to me. So, what are I know you're also involved in kind of startup community. You mentioned kind of angel investing. Um, what is kind of what do you see kind of in your future for the rest of the year and kind of beyond?
So one of the things I'm really trying now is I'm trying to figure out a way. So I think that I know, like, at my strengths, I'm really good at making people enthusiastic and like orchestrate things without it being felt as if it's orchestrated, and like, being able to kind of create a community and an atmosphere. When I'm stressed and at a bad point, I become a perfectionist and I want stuff to become as I want them to be. And I really want to build this community of people. And the way I'm trying to do it now is making sure that I'm not spending the time, because it won't scale if I'm going to do everything. And I'm not good at absolutely even remotely everything. Like, I'm pretty bad at most things. So I think so I've hired two people that are doing that, and they're just amazing. And what I'm trying to do now is coach them so they can be great. But sometimes, of course, it feels like pushing a rope. I mean, you feel like this is the way I would like to do it. They're not. So like, what do I do now? And the same thing about angel investment, like trying to create an angel investment community and trying to get the mentality of like helping first. And just the problem is that a lot of times, like, you got to lead by example. But the problem is that I don't want to be in a situation where if I'm not investing, if I'm not attending, then people see it as signaling value that something is bad. So like, I'm trying to like learn that. And of course, there are plenty of other people that do angel investing, so it's not that big of a problem. But like, one of the things I'm trying to work with a lot is like, how do I build a community, and like, with me not building it, but like, more like, I guess, like, I don't want to be patronizing, but like fostering a community.
Right.
And so I'm doing a couple of different things. I bought a pretty big house inside the city, like in the center of the city, and like, which is just an office hotel, but like to build a physical, really good startup culture there, like, tangible, like selecting who's in, who's out, making events, hired a person who runs it, amazing person, starting this community initiative, which is like a virtual organization, of course, they don't have a house or anything, and trying to get them to do that. Co-started an angel group, which is like a mini fund thing with a lot of like really amazing, or like with 8 other much more amazing angels than I am, and trying to like create a better way of angel investing. And the thing I'm really trying to find out for myself is, am I best at kind of spinning plates? You just like, getting a plate to spin and then going to the next plate and the next plate, but actually not doing it myself? Or will it be that, in 2 years, I'm going to feel out of the loop and useless and restless, and then just figuring out how I get in. And I don't really know. Like, I wish I was the person who could just sit and read. I read a lot, and I read a lot of fiction because I think it's really important, because I love understanding how people think. And I wish I could just, my dream is kind of like in a year that I'm going to sit in this house in a chair and read a really awesome book that I like and talk to super interesting people and feel that I'm helping, but without feeling that like I'm needed, but like
I know what you
that
mean.
I'm value adding. And I think that's going to be it's going to be a tightrope to walk. Most personally, I mean, figuring out a way where like I don't feel not needed, as a bad thing.
Sure.
So that's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be great. And also, like, my 3 kids, my oldest is 8, and my youngest are 5. They're twins, and my oldest is kind of like what I would call in the Goldilocks zone of board games.
Okay.
So I think the Goldilocks zone is like how far a planet can be from the sun to have life. Like, if it's too close, it's going to be too hot. If it's too far, it's going to be too cold. Goldilocks zone is when it's just right. And my son is in the age where we can now play fun computer games. It's
Sure.
hot, not computer games, board games. Sorry,
Right.
It's hot enough, but like, he's 8, so I'm still cool. So it's not cold enough. So we have a couple of over 4 years. In 4 years, he doesn't want to play with me, for
Sure.
God's sake.
For a few years, right?
For a few years,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Then I have to buy ski passes for him to meet me again. So I think that, so I really feel that I really like spending, and one of the things I love about board games is that board games are very interesting. I personally find them interesting because there are 2 parts of a board game that I love. One is that you have to figure out what's in the head of other people.
Totally.
Which is so fun. And the other part of it is that a board game usually is comprised of 3 phases. There's a setup phase, like, start playing the game, and you like set up you start like whatever the board game is, like taking land or whatever it is, and then you have the mid phase where it's like the rules slightly change because now it's getting a bit too occupied or whatever that kind of game it is. And in the end, it just becomes like, only 5 moves left or whatever it is, and then the rules change again. And I love those games where like intellectually you have to realize, is it now it switches, or should I switch my tactic yet? And I really enjoy playing those kind of games with my kids and just seeing how kids attack them with completely wonderful tactics. And like I love kids, not only my own kids, but because kids are they're so genuine, they're really, really honest, and they love helping other people, and they really learn like sponges. So I think that for me, it's like they have everything that I love, like, you know, learning, helping, and just like seeing things in a new way. So I think that's the thing I'm thinking about. Like if there's a future where I'm gonna, I don't know, work with kids or help kids or do something like educational tools for kids or something where I get to see, or it doesn't have to be kids. I just love to see people develop and blossom.
No, that's awesome, man. That's amazing. And I love, we're kind of coming to the end of the show, but I love how you were like genuinely open about, you know, kind of everything, right? And I love, like, I think you kind of mentioned it, like when you show almost like your vulnerabilities or kind of just being honest, kind of the good and bad. And I really love that about you. And when we talked a while ago, just kind of in our pre-interview, I love that about you. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, not just because, you know, you've been super successful in the past and you know, and you will continue to be, but I love the fact that you're just like a genuinely open, honest person, right? And you're not trying to hide or fake things, right? And I think not a lot of people are like that.
I think that the reason I am is also because I think that I mean, parts of it is I think there are a couple of different things. One is like, as the way I grew up, I kind of grew up in the way where like I'm worthless, but I'm still okay. Which is like, I'm a big Brené Brown fan. I was like, I think the best thing, like, you know, if you grow up as a, you know, a fourth child, it's like, I'm worthless at everything, but they still apparently like me. And then the other thing is like, I think I just believe in that I kind of have like creative courage, I guess. It's like, I just believe that I could just try. Like, I don't feel that there's a reason why it wouldn't work. And that, of course, makes me a lot of times the fool. I'm the person who just says the thing that nobody's allowed to say, because I'm like, why not say this? It's like, you know, everybody realized this. So like, why not me just saying it? And I think that ends like, and I think that what happens then is that you end up in all these super interesting places when you do that. And I think that what I realized there is that what scares me the most about today in the society we're moving into is like people are scared.
Yep.
People are scared about their jobs. People are scared about the future. People are scared about just new things. I mean, people are scared about AIs and robotics and automation are going to take their jobs and kill them maybe. Immigrants are evil and terrorists are evil and everybody's out like to get them. And, you know, the religious are evil. No, the non-religious are evil. And it's like, my neighbors are evil. It's like, and the thing I hate about that is like, and makes me so sad is I think in that world, everybody loses.
Yep.
And what scares me so much is like also the world of like social media and internet also like fosters trolls and fosters people to brag about themselves and creates envy. And it's created this culture where like everybody's sad. And I think I'm very like short-term optimistic, but like very long-term dystopic.
Sure.
I really wish that we could figure out a way as humanity to just be nice, but then sadly I think it's going to be hard. But I think that for me, one of the turning points was like I grew up in this family where like you can never do enough. Like you just do more, do it better, and like no, you're liked anyway, but like you could definitely do better. And I think that it made me the person. Whereas like when I was a kid, I could have been I was like slightly elitistic. I think my parents are a bit elitistic. I know they're like either elitistic, you know, like better grades or more interesting people or whatever, or better. And I think when I was 19, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease.
Sure.
And I have a lot of grit. So I got some fever, inflammation. I didn't care. I was like, just leave me alone. And then after like 2 weeks, it got really bad. And I had like way over 100 degrees. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I was like really, really bad. Somebody rushed me to the hospital. I had been in bed for like 3 days, sitting like, leave me alone. And then in the hospital, they just like found that I had this massive inflammation. They did surgery on me. And what happened after like post-surgery is that all of the doctors, like a lot of the doctors and surgeons wanted to talk to me as specialists because they were fascinated. I was able to like just stay with that. Like how why didn't I rush to the hospital? Like, what happened, and how are we able to not the inflammation getting more? And they have all of these like intellectual questions. And then a nurse came in and she said, doctors, you got to leave Hampus alone. Nobody else had called me Hampus. Everyone else like, you and like patient and whatever. And then she came, you got to leave Hampus alone. And like, she walked up to me and was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel kind of like I've been hit by a bus, honestly. Like, I feel really weird in my whole body. And she was like, I think you need some painkillers and some rest, honestly. And she turned to the doctors and was like, I think you need to leave. And they were like, no, I really want to talk. And don't give him painkillers yet. Because like, we really talk with him when he's like, clear mind. And she was like, I'm sorry. Like, you got to leave. I mean, he's in post-operation. He should allow him to wake up. And I looked at her and realized she's one of those that like, she's not well paid. She's not got an amazing education. She's constantly spat upon. She works really, really hard. These doctors are like the elite of the society, and they're assholes.
Yep, fair. Yeah,
and that just completely changed my mind. I realized like the elite are not the people who are smart. It's the people who are nice.
Yeah,
and we don't cherish niceness at all.
You're right. You're totally right.
And I think that also changed me as a person. I think it just fundamentally made me feel I'm not going to be the kid who obfuscates how I talk to sound smart, which, I did in high school.
Okay.
But I realized I'm going to be the kid that just speaks completely normal. And if somebody says something complicated, I'm going to say, so what do you mean by abstruse? Or like, I'm just going to, like, I might know, but like maybe not everybody knows.
Sure.
Or like when somebody says, I think we're living in a simulation, I'm going to say like, oh, can you make that a practical thing? Like, how does that apply to normal life? I love the conversation, but like, let's make sure that I wouldn't say this out loud, but like just make sure that everybody joins the conversation. It's not like between the people who pretend they're smart. And that makes me a lot of times like a very uncomfortable person for a lot of people, because they were like, whoa, he called the bluff. And I was like, no, I'm not calling the bluff. I just want to have a real conversation.
Yeah,
life
you want
is
to
just
include everybody, right?
Yeah. And also myself, honestly. I was like, what do you mean? I'd love to have a real conversation, not you just quoting articles you read.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's awesome, man. But we're out of time, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can find you online and any other kind of social media or projects that you want to mention.
Yeah, so I blog mostly about like team building and startups and people, but also a bit about like curiosity and learning at hajak.se, and then .se as in Sweden. And then I have that as a Twitter handle too. HAJAK is my Twitter. Those are the two best places to find me. On LinkedIn is like, don't connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't write to me on LinkedIn. I just think it's just like you don't need to be friends with everybody. You can just like tweet me or like email me. My email address is everywhere, like on my LinkedIn profile. I will reply to you. So it's like, I think that just people can reach out to me, hajak.se, and the same thing on Twitter, or just email me, and I'd love to talk to them.
Perfect. Hampus, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
All right. Perfect, man. Thanks. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep going in the future.